Welcome to Feisty Ferrets. We are so excited to finally get this project rolling with you guys. So, if you haven't made it to our last stream and you are completely new to this project, I will be reintroducing Feisty Ferrets and also reintroducing myself. My name is Kaela. I am a game designer and a programmer. My undergrad was mostly focused on programming in Java and Python, as well as general design philosophy. And I'm now in grad school for programming. And my most recent projects have been a 2D mobile platformer in Unity and also some 3D Unreal projects. Shameless plug, the most recent of those is coming out on July 14th. It's called Snow Painters, and it will be on Steam, so you should go and download it. And right now, I'm working on Feisty Ferrets with you guys. So we're going to get into a bit more of the specs for that project, a bit of the details. But first, we're going to pass it off to Nat to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nat Messnard. My pronouns are they, them. And I am working with Kaela on this project, Feisty Ferrets, bringing you my background in storytelling, narrative design, game design, and teaching. So I am one of the instructors for Endless Studios. I'm here to help you learn how to do game making so you can contribute to great projects like this one. When I'm not working with Endless Studios, I teach narrative design and game design to university students at several different universities in the greater New York area. I'm based in New York City. I educationally have been on both sides of the brain. I was a mathematics undergrad, and then I have a graduate degree in creative writing. So of course I like to make games because that's where those two things intersect. I don't require that games have stories. This one's not going to be story heavy, but it is going to be heavy and hopefully fun, mischief, and a little bit of goofiness. And I'm just really excited also to be working on a project with Kaela, who is such an awesome collaborator. I love working on group projects and collaborating, being on a team. I think that that's one of the best ways to learn how to make games because that's how games get made. It is also just a good way to make friends. So, Kaela, it's really awesome to be working with you, to be streaming with you. I'm so excited that you're releasing a game. Before we get into the game design document, will you talk a little bit about your release? What kind of game is it? What is it going to feel like or be like to play this game about, what did you call it? It's Snow Painters?
Snow Painters, yes. So in keeping with this theme, it's another animal protagonist game. So you play as racing penguins. It's set in the Arctic, and there's 3 different levels that you can race around on. You can play it multiplayer with your friends, or you can play it with the AI that we created. I was one of the AI programmers, so another shameless plug. And it's super fun, very colorful because, of course, you're painting the snow. That's the fun mechanic. It was inspired by general arcade racers, but we wanted to add a twist when the game designer for our team was creating this concept. So what you do is you are a penguin. Penguins are black and white, but there are all of these little snow paint puddles in the snow. And when you run over them, you turn that color. And then you leave this trail of paint that's your color behind you. And there's a bunch of fun mechanics like splashing someone else with a color to force them to change, putting up a snowman to force someone to like run into it and lose their color. But the best part is that when you come back around the track to wherever you left your paint trail before, if it's still there and no one's bothered it, you can still get a speed boost whenever you go over it and you're the same color. So it's this super fun push and pull mechanic that kind of pushes the racing genre, and it's super cute and fun and made for people who are interested in projects like this. So I'm super excited about it.
I love your aesthetic. That's so cute. And I love how that elaborates on like a standard kind of racing mechanic, gives you a little bit of interest and other things to think about that maybe normally you wouldn't in a racing game. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, thank you for hyping me up so much. I'm also excited to have you be working as an instructor. If I didn't mention this already, my role is creative lead / industry pro. And what that means is that I came up with this concept for Feisty Ferrets. I came up with the idea, and all of the mechanics thus far are envisioned by me. I would love to have your guys' creative help as we go through this process. So if you guys have any idea, just want to put it out there right now. We are so down to hear your ideas, and we totally want to hear them. It's a creative process, you know, it's not just my vision, even though I'm the creative lead, it's all of our game. And part of that role in as well is creating documentation so that all of the teammates like you guys know exactly what's going on with this project, where my head is with it, and any ideas that you guys have. If I decide that, you know, I think that would be really fun, then that's part of my job, is to actually flesh out how will they work, and how can the other teammates get information about this new mechanic that we've thought up together. So all of that information is kind of centralized into this really big document for games. It's called a game design document. The name kind of names itself, but it's also just
Right.
shortened to GDD. And we have one ready for you guys so that we can kind of walk through Feisty Ferrets a bit more and get you guys some more information about it.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to checking this out. And just for all you folks out there watching and listening, if you are out there on the big wide internet and you've somehow found this video, you can participate in this project with us by joining Endless Studios. And we are talking out there to all the members of Endless Studios, inviting you to join and participate on this project with us. If you're a member of Endless Studios, you can contribute to the project in all kinds of ways. And anybody that wants to join should probably know what's in this game design document.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we ready to take a look at it?
Let's do it.
Sweet. So here's our little flashcard. Feisty Ferrets is the title, as we've said. And let's get into a little bit of what a game design document is before we actually look at the content. So a game design document is the central location for all information about a game. So pretty much all of your favorite games that you've ever played have had a game design document, and it is the absolute core of the game. Whoever is the creative lead, they also have other names like just game designer. They are the ones who are writing this up and adding things to it, and the whole team has access to it so that they can get updates and read about everything that has to do with their team. You can see on the side here, there's a bunch of different sections. So say you're an artist and you're like, well, I'm a new artist and I don't really know anything about the art direction of this game or the guidelines. You can just skip right on down to wherever the artist information is, and you can get all of the crucial information that you need for working on this game. So it's really helpful for bringing new members of the team on, like you guys. And like I said, it's updated. So anytime that something is changed in the game, the creative designer could just say, okay, guys, go read this part of the game design document, because it's what's called a living document. And that just means that it's not static. It's not permanent, because games are ever changing when they're in the development process. We're always play testing, always trying to find the fun. And that means that our initial vision could end up completely different from the final vision. And where can all of those changes be reflected? Where can teammates get all the newest and latest information about the game? Right here. So yeah, it's just, if you need anything, if you want to follow along, the link is in the Discord. So pretty much anytime you need information about Feisty Ferrets and you're not sure what to do, go here.
I was going to say, Kaela, I can't really imagine doing a game project without one of these. And I was going to just ask you, have you ever worked on a game that didn't have a game design document?
Oh gosh. I think pretty much all of my undergrad projects didn't have them, just because it was usually just me doing the project. So in that instance, that was fine because it was just me and I had all of the information in my head. But I did do a capstone in my undergrad, which there wasn't a game designer. It was kind of just like shared creative vision with everyone. And it was a mess. Like, it was such a bad time. All of my projects since then that have been team-based have had GDDs, and it's just so much better. It's such a mess to try to make a game without one of these to focus on.
Yeah, it almost sounds like it's an external brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
So what's in this brain then? What should we, like, if we're new to the project and we want to kind of figure out what's going on with Feisty Ferrets, what are some of the key things that at this early stage we should read in this document and know?
Yeah, so like I said, you might not have caught our first stream for Feisty Ferrets. So this will be a great way for me to kind of reintroduce the game and solidify the concepts that were already talked about in that stream. So the very first page, well, we have the contents. So if you need to find anything, if you're following along, just go here and you can easily just click these little links. But let's start with the high concept. So in a real game design studio, if you're pitching a new project to someone, you're going to want a very, very short, basically an elevator pitch, something that you can say in just a few seconds that gives people the exact vision for what this game is supposed to be. Because when you're making a new project, whoever has created this design, or if a team of you has created this design together, you all have images of it in your head, and those might not match if you're not all on the same page. So it's really important to be able to centralize on this is exactly what the game is. We can all picture it exactly the same way. And we know exactly what the other people are talking about in different aspects of the team scenario. So the high concept for this game is you play as a cage escaping, human evading ferret in an adorably silly third person puzzle platformer. So the genre is a puzzle platformer. That means that there's going to be a lot of jumping around and obstacles involved. And the puzzle side of that is that there's going to be a little bit of thinking involved too. So you're going to not just run around and have all these platforms come up, and it might not be obvious how you're going to get over those platforms at first, for example. And the adorably silliness. So I have a few games here listed. It has the chaotic energy of Untitled Goose Game, which is a game where you play as a goose. I love animal protagonists, and you are basically just causing mayhem in this town. You're just like running around and breaking things and messing up people's days, and it's very, very fun. Um, it's also combined with the slinky physics of Snake Pass, which is another puzzle platformer where, surprise, you play as an animal, you play as a snake, and you kind of are like looping your body around in the slithery, wriggly way that a snake does. And ferrets have that same kind of body. So we want to really invoke that feeling of like, oh, I'm wiggling around in this level. Like I'm not like a straight bodied creature. I have a lot of curvature and turns to me. And then the bright aesthetic of Slime Rancher. If you've never played Slime Rancher, please go play Slime Rancher. It is adorable. There's just these little balls of slime and they're so cute. They're all different colors and they all have different personalities and wants, and you just take care of them and put them on your ranch. It's adorable. But altogether, when you're making a high concept, it is really useful to mention other game titles that people can be like, oh, I know that game. Okay, I can picture it a little bit better now when I'm thinking of this game's concept and what it looks like. So that's our high concept.
Another thing I'll say about comparable games or comp titles, is it can help you know what you're making too. And especially early on when you're excited about game making and you want to be like the next big thing or an artist, it's tempting to say it's not like any other game out there. That is a very tempting thing to want to make because, of course, you want to create something that's unique and different and a hit in a way that no other game was. And the risk of doing that is that you actually don't understand what you're making and you don't end up finishing it. So the truth of the matter in game making is the way we innovate is kind of like building with Legos. We take a couple pieces from here, we take a couple pieces from there, and then we put them together into a unique project. But it's not like being an inventor. It's definitely about learning what the possibilities are and putting the possibilities together in a new way, taking ideas from games that came before, and then making something unique with those concepts. So, of course, we're not cloning Slime Rancher or Untitled Goose Game, but we're taking inspiration so that we understand what design space that we're working in.
Yeah, I think that Lego analogy is really great, Nat, for setting up you know, most of the time you never hear about, oh, this was really inventive gameplay. It's always innovative gameplay because you're taking the mechanics that already exist. And this can go for any form of media. I mean, there's very limited genres of movies and you can expand and innovate on those genres, but the same thing for games. Like there are certain genres and sometimes you can combine mechanics to become new genres and innovate on existing styles of play, but you're really reusing the same core mechanics of, say, moving around in a space, jumping on things, triggering things to happen, having AI that you can interact with. They're all this very same core concepts, but you're just innovating and making them and combining them in new and fun ways.
Exactly. And if we weren't doing that, we would be outside of what a game is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a limitation. In fact, that just tells us what we're doing, which is we're making a video game.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's really reassuring because it gives us a place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that we're starting in this place with Feisty Ferrets. And I personally feel really excited because I too like games with animal protagonists. And I think your high concept sounds super fun. That sentence to me immediately gives me an eagerness to play this game, which I would say is a really good sign about the future of this project. So
Yay. Well, thanks,
let's
Nat. I'm so glad to hear that.
yay! I want to know a little more about it. So keep going and tell us what comes next.
Yeah, sure. So once you've got that high concept out on the table, if your pitch is going well, then whoever you're pitching to will probably say, okay, I'm interested. Tell me more. Give me the details. So we have this game overview here, and the first part here is the theme, the setting, the genre. Obviously, we already know from the high concept that we're playing as a ferret, and we mentioned cage escaping, human evading. So our main character is a ferret, and its goal in life is to escape its cage because ferrets are very naughty creatures. They're very mischievous. They just want to do exactly what they're not supposed to do, which means escaping its cage and having free reign of the household without human intervention. So our cage is going to be the stage for our game. And because we want to invoke this bright aesthetic of Slime Rancher and this fun, cutesy feel, we're going to have a lot of brightly colored toys and objects that fill up this cage space. And those are the objects that you'll be interacting with on your journey to escaping the cage in every level. So we also have some gameplay mechanics here. And again, this GDD is a living document. These are subject to be expanded upon, probably not completely changed, but it happens in the game industry, just so you know. But currently, our core gameplay mechanics are running around and exploring and jumping and climbing on and off of platforms. These are the two mechanics that are really, really integral to the platforming genre. And we also have some bouncy surfaces that boost you higher in the level, and we can push around objects to make new paths and trigger other objects. So these are some of the mechanics that we could use in a puzzle aspect. Instead of just running around and jumping on the platforms in a very obvious manner, we can use mechanics like the ladder to make the player really think about, okay, how am I going to get onto this platform, or how do I traverse through this level? So those are our mechanics right now. Like I said earlier in the stream, if you have any ideas, please, please, please tell us, because that is exactly what this whole project is about. We're all working together on this team. We're not in charge. We are collaborating with you guys to make this game be the best game that it can be. So your ideas are so, so valued. And like I had mentioned also, there are some similar titles. So one of them was Snake Pass, and another one was Spyro. So those two are going to be streamed tomorrow, actually, Friday, I believe, at 2 p.m. EST. I could be wrong on that, but it's either 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. EST, but we will post an announcement later in Discord. Please feel free to come and watch that. And if you can't make it to that, or if you just feel interested, feel free to play these games on your own as well, because they'll give you a really good feel for exactly what the puzzle platforming genre is and exactly the kind of game that we're trying to make.
I just wanted to say, like, looking at that list, like, I am low-key obsessed with I Am Bread. So,
oh my gosh, really? I Am Bread is so funny.
I know why you're not doing that one on the stream because it's not an animal. In fact, it's a piece of bread
Right.
that you play as in that game.
Well,
But
I
I mean,
mean,
bread has feelings, right?
yeah,
Like,
bread has feelings. And, when you're making bread, you're using yeast, and that's a living creature. So we could stretch here and say that it's an animal protagonist.
it's made of a collective of creatures, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Check out I Am Bread. It's the most silly and just it's so inspired. It's genius. That's all
It
I have
is.
to say.
Yes, it's very silly. And we have some links already. Like I said, the GDD link is in the Feisty Ferrets Discord page. So if you feel like watching any of the videos that we found for you on all of these titles, feel free. Watch them at any time. Tell us what you think about I Am Bread after watching the video.
Yes, send us a message on Discord, specifically me, and let me know what you think. Because number one, I love to geek out about games, but also like you'll see.
It is so goofy. Okay, well, I think that we've talked about the story a little bit already. You're a ferret. You're very mischievous. You're very wiggly, and you just want to do exactly the wrong thing. So you have lots of toys that you can play with. And the kind of lore of this story, besides the fact that you just want to escape your cage to cause problems for your humans, is that your humans they love you. You're their pet. So of course they adore you. And they keep thinking every time you escape, "Aw, he's bored. He must need more toys." So every level that we create, we're hoping to have more and more toys within this cage, and perhaps even getting a bigger cage sometimes because your humans love you so much and they're like, "Oh, maybe if we just entertain him more in his cage, then he'll finally be at peace and want to stay in his cage because he'll have things to play with." We know, of course, that this is not the case. We are always going to want to escape the cage. But as we expand these levels, we're going to have more and more toys and more things to play with. So that's the lore of our Feisty Ferrets story.
I love that you made the antagonist in this, which is, of course, what we call the enemy or the boss or whoever is kind of coming to get you or threatening you, actually doing so out of kindness. That is such a wonderful setup. It's family friendly. It's resisting tropes in video games of there being a big bad who's trying to kill you. Your human is just trying to make your life comfortable, but there's a misunderstanding at the center of this lore that I really dig.
Yeah. I mean, your human isn't putting you in the cage to be mean to you. This is the safest place for you to be as a ferret. If you can go loose in the house, you could get into all kinds of things, and your human doesn't want that for you. So that's why they keep putting you in the cage,
right.
Of course.
Absolutely.
So
keeping you safe, keeping you entertained, right?
That is what all good pet owners do. Yeah. So this is a little graphic that I came up with for the core gameplay loop. So we talked about the mechanics of the game. That's basically what the player does in the game and how the game functions. So being able to jump around and use platforms to jump on top of things, being able to get boosted up into the air higher than you would be able to jump by yourself, being able to push things around to move them, and being able to trigger objects. These are all mechanics, and we could have those mechanics in any kind of game. There are no ferrets attached to those mechanics. They have nothing to do with ferrets. They are just mechanics that you could put into any game, and they're really the building blocks of what makes a game in general, not a specific type, just a game. But the core gameplay loop that we're going to see here, this is exactly how those mechanics tie in to what the players will be doing in this game from moment to moment. So the concept of this loop is the player will do one thing, and then they'll go to the next thing, and then the next thing, and then they'll just keep cycling through that for as long as they're playing the game in this loop fashion. So there can be a lot of different levels of gameplay loops. I've given you the highest level, which is kind of, you can think of it as minute to minute or even hour to hour. There can even be second to second gameplay loops if you want to get really, really technical. So that could be like pressing the space bar to jump up and moving forward onto a platform. That could be part of a really, really tiny loop. But this high level loop is the basically what you're doing in general in this game. So you're climbing objects because it's a platforming game. You're causing chaos. So all of these things that are in your cage. Oh, we have a visitor. Hello. Um, all of these things that are in your cage, you can push around and move as much as you want. And then the final goal of each level is to escape the cage. So as you're playing this game, you'll be doing these three things over and over and over again until you feel like you've escaped enough cages. Which, I mean, of course, for a ferret, you're never going to escape enough cages.
You have an endless appetite for cage escape.
Exactly. Yes. It fuels you.
Cool. So, do you have some stuff we could take a look at in Unity yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a little tiny example level ready for you guys. We can take a look at the assets that already exist, and this will hopefully really solidify everything that we just talked about, all of the mechanics that we'll be using, how the aesthetics of color play into our project. Hopefully this will just give you a really good idea of what it actually looks like. So this is Unity. Welcome to Unity. We can look around. This is the scene editor. One thing that's interesting about Unity, there's many things that are interesting, but you might be wondering, oh, what is this weird like flat thing that if I look at it head on? This is UI. Unity puts their UI into world space, so that's really interesting. And by world space, if you think about any video game that's 3D or even 2D ones, there are all of these objects that you can see and interact with, and you're moving around in the space. So the space that you can move around on, that's world space. Versus screen space, everything that you see on the game is technically two-dimensional. Like, it's not really 3D. You're not really moving around anywhere. Everything is flat. So everything that's very much on the surface probably doesn't really move around, is kind of statically 2D and just kind of right here. That's screen space. So this little object here is just a piece of UI. Don't worry about it as we're looking around the level. But you can see a whole bunch of 3D objects.
Yeah. And Kaela, while you're showing us this, can you tell the viewers out there, what are you doing to move around in the space like that? How are you making that happen?
Yeah, so right now, to spin around, I'm pressing the right mouse button and just dragging. You can see this little eye icon that kind of moves in the direction that I'm moving. And then when I actually want to go from the location that I'm currently sitting at, I can press WASD, just like most 3D games, and it'll let me kind of fly around.
So, are you playing the game right now?
No, I'm not playing the game. This is the scene editor, and this kind of just allows me to like move stuff around. So I can move this wherever I feel like. I can put it back, and when I play the game, I won't be able to move those objects anymore. They will be exactly where I put them, unless of course it's a game mechanic. But that's, I can't just kind of drag them wherever I want to or make them bigger or smaller. But in the scene editor, you can do that, and that's how you build up a level of the game.
Cool. So I think that's an important distinction for folks listening out there, especially if you've played Minecraft, which you may be familiar with. And in Minecraft, of course, we can change the environment while we're playing the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this, we have to toggle, right? We have two realities. We have this reality where we are editing the game and changing it, but it doesn't always look the same. We get to see this UI sort of poking in because that's where it happens to be hanging out in our edit. And then when we play the game, we get to see what a player sees. And I think you did that a second ago, and we got to see what that UI actually looks like. Okay.
Yep. So
You're
instead of being this weird flat thing that you can just kind of skate past, you won't see that at all when you start playing the game. It will become this screen that actually you can't see until the very end of the game, or the end of the level at least. And that's just part of the magic of Unity.
Yeah.
But another distinction to make between playing the game versus being in the scene, I'm flying around freeform. I'm not using a player controller, as they call them. So whenever you start the game, you kind of embody this player controller. You become this player character, and that will be our ferret. So when we actually start playing the game, we're not going to be flying around like this. We will be in the perspective and in the body of this little dude who is just adorable.
Yeah. And again, to continue my Minecraft analogy here, if you've ever played Minecraft, you might be thinking Minecraft creative mode, and I've turned the gravity off.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar situation with this. This is a lot more powerful than Minecraft. It's
Mm-hmm.
not made with voxels.
Mm-hmm.
It's made with any number of different high or low poly 3D objects that we can put in place and move around. But it's kind of like being in that mode where you've got all of the possible objects, you don't have gravity on, you're flying around in this world that you've made and trying to make it fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you going to play the game for us and let us see what we can do?
I am going to play the game. Okay, so once I press this magical button here, I will no longer be able to fly around. I will be our ferret. So here we go. Okay, here we are.
Yay!
We're so
Oh, it's so
adorable.
cute.
So further down in the GDD, I do have a video of me playing this game, and I know that this is being recorded and will be posted. But I just want to reiterate from that video, if you guys have name suggestions for this little dude, I would love to hear them because he deserves a name. He's just too precious. He's surrounded he's surrounded by this little pink outline, and he makes little motion lines whenever he jumps around and moves, and I just adore him. So we can run around in this space, and I'm moving right now the same way that I was moving in the editor. So I'm using WASD. I don't have to right click, but I can still, oh my gosh, my cat just pushed over a painting.
Oh no! Your cat is jealous of this unnamed ferret pulling all of your
Yes.
attention.
It's because I keep talking about how mischievous and silly the ferret is and how much the humans love him for it. And she's like, I can be mischievous. I can be cute. So I can rotate my mouse the same way that I could in Unity and look around with my camera. And yeah, I'm just moving in the exact same way, but it obviously has a very different feel, and I can't control any of these cool little objects that we have to interact with. So speaking of the objects, which one should I touch first, Nat? What should I do?
Let's see. So you have jump on me, you have touch me, and then I see a couple other things here. Let's do. I kind of want to do the trampoline.
Okay. All right. So yes, this is a sign that you can put into any levels that you create if you decide to be a level design task, and you can write or to do a level design task, and you can write whatever messages you want on it. So this is just a way for anyone who hasn't ever played this game before. When you're making a level, you have to put yourself into the mind of, okay, I've never played this game. Or maybe if you're making a level that's intermediate, you can put yourself in the mindset, okay, I have a little bit of experience in this game, but I don't know exactly what happens in the level. You do know because you're the level designer, but you have to pretend like you don't know. So these signs are just little helpful ways to be like, I'm going to tell the player, kind of give them a hint of what they could do here. So this is a trampoline, and oh, look, we can jump on it. It gives us a little boost in the air that puts us higher than how we can normally jump.
Love
It's very fun. Oh my gosh, is my cat's tail in the kitty? Please.
Jealousy.
She's so jealous. Okay, so we've interacted with that. I'm just going to go in order now. So this is like a little rope block, and we can push it around, and it has physics that reacts to our body as we're moving around. So that's pretty neat, but nothing's really happening when we're interacting with it. Kitty cat, please. She's so cute. if we go over here to this one, so this sign says touch me, and let's see, nothing happens when I touch the sign. Again, thinking in terms of I've never played this game or I have very little experience in this game. So they probably are referring to this trigger here, which is so cool. It like glows and goes down when you press it. And these little balls spawn. And just more and more of them are spawning. For anyone who did happen to catch the last Feisty Ferret stream, you might remember that there were just infinite balls spawning once you sat on this little trigger. They do stop now. There's a finite amount of balls, which is kind of sad because the playpen looked really fun to just mess around with. But same mechanic, you can still push the balls around. So that's fun to just like push these little balls. They're so cute. Someday I'll have
Love
a
it.
playpen of them.
Oh my gosh, a ball pit.
Yeah, ball pit. And I was planning on showing you this little trigger here, but it looks like one of the balls has already solved the puzzle by itself. So earlier the ramp was lowered and you're not high enough to be able to just kind of jump up from where it was before. So this ball has rolled onto the trigger and solved the puzzle for us. And speaking of that, that's kind of like sometimes that just happens where the puzzle will solve itself for a player. Like the ball just kind of rolled out into space. I wasn't planning on it to do that, but it's totally possible in game design that something happens where, the object just does what you want it to without the player even trying. And another thing that's funny is you don't always get the gameplay that you were designing for. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that. So the person who created all of this awesome artwork for the game, his name is Dan. He rules. We love Dan. And he told me that he didn't solve the puzzle by putting the ball onto it. He didn't even solve the puzzle by using this trigger, nay, nay. What he did was this little blue arch, you can push it. So apparently what he did was push this arch all the way up the ramp and use it to jump up onto it. And that's something that totally happens when you're making a level and you have multiple ways to solve it. Like you might have been envisioning, oh, the level is going to be solved in this way because this is how I designed the puzzle. But sometimes your players just have totally different ideas. And if they can do something in a way that you weren't expecting, they will do something in a way that you weren't expecting.
Absolutely. And of course, in this situation, one option would be to fix it and make it so you can't push that blue piece. Or you could say, like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. I'll give people multiple ways to solve it, just depending on the feel you want. And one nice thing that can come from having people play test your game is just ask them, like, did you enjoy that experience? Was it satisfying? And hear what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think emergent gameplay is always fun. If you do want to be really strict about my level can only be solved in this one specific way, that's fine and fair. But I think that having mysterious ways for your players to solve things is always super, super fun. So now that we're on kind of the second phase of this level, we can look around. We see we have a bunch of trampolines and some really tall blocks that I'm definitely not tall enough to jump on top of. And there's also like a ton more going on up there. So we definitely want to get up there. So learning from down there that we can jump on the trampolines, I'm going to try that.
Woo!
And this is what platforming is all about. Yeah, it's about getting these fun moments of like, wee, I'm flying around the level and I have so much bodily autonomy to just go around wherever I want. So we can kind of cross over this little cylinder to get to the third part of the level. And we can go pretty much wherever we want to from here. We could go around this way through this little maze, and this looks like a dead end. So we could turn around or we could find a way to jump back up. But we learned from the arch down there that these blue objects are pushable, whereas these wooden ones are static, meaning not pushable. So I pushed that one out of the way, and I can climb up all these little ramps and go through and, oh no, there was a hole. Oh
Oh.
no. So we can keep going on a different path in the maze. And this is like what I said before, like you can have a maze or any kind of level where there's only one way to solve it. But I like to have multiple different solutions because not every player is going to think the same way. And it's really fun to just be able to explore things. And it also gives replayability. Like there's so many reasons to have kitty cat, no. There's so many reasons to have multiple ways to solve a puzzle. So we can solve this in many different ways, but the final piece is to push this big blue barrier, and we have a nice sign that tells our players a little hint, just like earlier. It says exit here, and voila, here's the magical UI that I was talking about that disappeared when we started playing the game. So we have this timer. I don't think we did very well in terms of speed runs, but one of the reasons that you want to display times is to encourage people to replay your levels over and over again until they get the absolute best time that they can. It also creates a bit of community. If you've ever heard of speed running, there can be competitions for who can beat the levels the fastest. But yeah, this is the end screen, and if we press on this button to replay, we spawn right back at the beginning.
I love it. Oh my
Yay.
gosh, so much fun. There's so many different kinds of things in it. It's definitely developed from the last time I took a look, which was when we did the project briefing, and we were just seeing the infinite spawning of the balls. So
Which was a very
I'm really
fun
excited.
bug. I kind of miss it.
I know.
But I'm super
I still
excited
think we should
too.
put that in. We need an Easter
Yes,
egg.
we totally will. I'm definitely thinking about making a level where it's like a ferret playground, and maybe you're not solving a puzzle, but it's just for fun. Like on this ramp here, you can kind of get some physicsy sliding motions down. So I was thinking you could have like a slide into a ball pit, and then you just run around. It would be super fun to have a ferret playground.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
Which is, for the folks out there in Endless Studios who are joining this project, reading the GDD, thinking about
Mhm.
contributing to this, it sort of looks like the game is done. But of course, we both know that this is just the very beginning of this. What do you
Yeah.
need people to do? I mean, what are we asking people to contribute to this? What should people focus on?
Yeah, so there are so many different tasks that you can sign up for if you're interested. We have just this one little level right here that's very short and only has 3 parts to it. So one task that you can do is making more levels. So if you saw any of these little tiny puzzles and were like, oh, I think of this kind of puzzle and we can build off of it to make a bigger puzzle, you're absolutely right. And I would love for you to use those ideas to make your own level. You will have access to all of these assets that exist, and we will also, as another task, be trying to create more assets. So there's 2 sides to creating assets. You have to make the artwork for it, as we called out and shouted out Dan for making. So if you're interested in art, you could make things like these trampolines and these triggers, even these little blocks here, just as obstacles that you don't interact with very much. Anything like that is creating an asset that can be placed into the world. And then if you're interested in new mechanics that can expand off of this, for example, one that I was considering putting into the game is we have these pushing mechanics, but what if we also had a pulling mechanic where the ferret could kind of grab onto something and like tug it along with it? That could be cool. So if you're interested in either coming up with new mechanics that someone else actually creates the implementation of, or if you're interested in coding and actually implementing those new mechanics yourself, those are more tasks that you can take on. There's so many more as well, like audio design is something that every game needs to feel good and juicy, as they say. And in other sprints that aren't development focused, you can do things like playtest, which Nat talked about a bit earlier when they mentioned giving feedback and just asking your players if they had fun with this thing or what they liked and what they didn't like. That's what the purpose of a playtester is. So there's all these different roles that you can contribute to in this project, and we need all of them. So anything to that
Yeah.
sounds interesting to you.
So much stuff, and people can really do whatever interests them. I will
Hmm.
say, Kaela, I talked to some folks today who are Endless Studios members. One person said they were interested in music composition and audio.
Hmm.
And, it would be awesome to, I mean, one of the things that we don't have yet is like a bouncing noise when you jump on the trampoline, like the sound of the
Hmm.
ferret moving when it walks. Like at the end of the level, you get like a sound effect of it going dun 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 or whatever. And of course, like one thing that makes playing games so satisfying and fun is good background music to jam out to.
Yeah.
So I would invite anyone who's interested in the audio side of game making to definitely be a part of this project. We will tell you what we need and
Hmm.
you can compose to your heart's content. I talked to another person who was interested in 3D modeling and animation.
Hmm.
And if that's your path and you want to do some playtime in Blender or Maya, this is a great project for that too, because like that arch that you've got on the screen right there,
Hmm.
that's something even a beginner could work out and model in a program like Blender. It's a great place to start to figure out how to create things in 3D. And then because we've got this sort of basic set of game systems worked out that we can all play with, you can bring those objects in, make sure they look right, and then play with them in this physics environment and see what they feel like to actually touch and push. And oh, I see you're figuring out Dan's. It's actually really convenient the way you have that arch. It's like built for a ferret to push.
Yeah, it kind of is.
It almost makes me think of like, I wonder if you could model some kind of like vehicle or balls in the back of a little truck and then like kind of drive the truck.
Oh my gosh, that would be so cute. Do ferret heists.
Get it up
Feisty
there.
ferrets, more like
Ferret
heisty
heist.
ferrets.
I'll have to do that. I'll have to
Yes.
design a level and have it be the heist level.
Yes.
The other
I mean,
thing, the other thing that occurs
everything that. Right, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I'll go first, then you go. The other thing that occurred to me in watching this, and speaking of heists, is a system of collectibles would be fun to give folks additional incentives to explore every nook and cranny.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. All right, I'm going to stop playing with this because it's just so fun. And let's see. Now that we've talked a bit about level design and mechanics and all of those wonderful things that go into making a game, in our last few minutes, I wanted to touch on a bit more of the GDD, if you're down for that, Nat.
Sounds great.
Okay, awesome. So there's quite a bit that we haven't gone over, and it's possible that we won't get to all of it, but just so you know, these later areas are pretty much just asset lists, compiling everything that we already have in the game, and also giving some resource links. If you're interested in art, there is an art guide down here, a creative design document, which is the same as the game design document, but focused on the creative and artistic aspects of that. And if you're interested in that or in code, right now we have those two resources laid out for you guys. But feel free to go over that at your own pace. Since we just talked about the levels, I thought it would be cool to talk about exactly what every level in a Feisty Ferrets level or in the Feisty Ferrets game requires, and how to get into level design if you've never done it before and this feels overwhelming perhaps, or if you're just interested in knowing more about how a level designer thinks. So levels in Feisty Ferrets need to include a spawn point, which we could make a spawn point that you just place in the level, or it could just be placing the player controller and having the player auto-possess it as soon as they press play in the editor. You also need a series of obstacles because we are a puzzle platformer. we are requiring that the ferret be able to jump around and interact with some obstacles in the level, but the way that those are arranged and the actual feel of how those are interacted with is totally up to you. We also need an exit point. So when we left through that archway and that UI screen popped up that told us you are a free ferret and showed us the amount of time that it took to complete the level, that will also be a requirement. But those are pretty loose guidelines. You have a lot of flexibility and freedom with how you want your levels to be. And to give you some guidance on how to go about making those levels, if you're new to level design, there are some best practices that I would suggest following and just some things to keep in mind while you're making these levels. So some of the things that we saw in the game, first of all, focusing on the layout and structure before beautifying. This is a concept called whiteboxing in the industry. So everything that you saw was pretty much, there were like a few colors that popped out, but everything was pretty much just this same plain old wooden texture. And even that is beautifying it to an extent. So before I had the textures in and before I had the colors in, everything was just white geometry. And it didn't look very appealing whatsoever, but that didn't matter because my focus was to get a feel for how I wanted the players to engage with the level and not how they see the level.
Right, right. And one of the things I'll say about that is it's very tempting to get sucked into like designing a torch on the wall for like
Mhm.
20 hours. And
Yeah.
so this isn't a restriction or no, but more it helps us avoid getting obsessed with everything at once. We can tactically and strategically deploy our obsessions so that we develop the bones of the level first, and then we can obsess over like the texture of the walls, like the flicker of a fire in a torch, and maybe like pulling in cool lighting so that it kind of draws you around the corner, things
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah. And this is a best practice for every aspect of game design as well, not just level design. We call it just get it on the screen fast. It's part of prototyping. You don't care about how it looks at first. It is all about how it feels. So for artists, this is the concept of finished, not perfect. Get it done as fast as you can in the first iteration, just so that you have something that represents your final. It doesn't even have to represent your very final thoughts, but just your very basic thoughts on what you want the concept to be. Just get it done as quick as possible. The same thing applies for code. When you're making a new mechanic, you don't care about beautiful code yet. You don't care about, is this the optimal way to code this? Just get it done, get it in so that the other people who are relying on that mechanic that you're making can start playing around with it, even if it's not the perfect solution. So yeah, this applies to every aspect of game design. The next one is teach through exploration, not explanation. So if you've ever played a game and you've had this wall of text that you had to read in order to understand how to play the game, it's kind of like board games in a way where you have to read through this whole manual. But when we're playing a board game, we're expecting that, right? But a lot of the times in video games, we're just kind of putting on a headset, we're grabbing our mouse or our controller, and we're like, all right, we're ready to go. We don't want to have to learn anything. Of course, you have to learn a bit, especially depending on, you never know how experienced of a gamer in general your player is. So even me talking about using the WASD keys to move around in the editor and in the game in Unity, that could be a foreign concept to a very new player. So you have to explain these things in some way, but you don't want to force the players to read through this whole monologue. So the best way to do it, if you know that your player has at least some experience, then you can assume, okay, they probably know what the keys are, or at least enough to be able to experiment with the keys. And that experimentation should be fun. So you should have things for them to engage with, and just be able to explore and like touch things and push things and see, oh, okay, this is how this works. And if they have no experience whatsoever, you can still have that same communication of, okay, you need to press the W key to do this thing, but you don't have to have it be a huge wall of text. Some things that I've seen when I was making the 2D platformer game, one of the other teams had this really cool concept where they still had text-based even, but instead of having it just be like plain text that you have to read, it was a game about like a possum that runs around and you're like exploring this back alley. And so they had graffiti that was really pretty and the player like was, yeah, it was super interesting to look at. So you were engaged even though you were still learning about this concept. And you can
That's
also
really
in a lot of,
cool.
yeah. And in a lot of games, you can use dialogue instead or have a teacher character that kind of walks you through the basics. And that's just a lot more interesting to engage with. It makes you feel like you're already playing the game the whole time.
I'll add on there as someone who does a fair amount of game design for board games and tabletop RPGs that it is a best practice, even in tabletop games, to minimize the amount of reading that players need to do before they can start. And that is why, for example, a lot of board games come with decks of cards that have rules that are written on the cards. So you draw a card and you read a mechanic. You don't need to read that in the rules before you start to play. You read that rule when you draw the card. And that's an example of how board games get people engaged and flowing fast without reading this massive Bible. Now, of course, some board games do that, but in fact, a lot of board games, even with really thick manuals, that is a reference document. And the point is to start playing as soon as you can. So I am such an advocate of this in all game design spaces. It is very challenging, but you have to imagine you will not be there. And if you try to substitute for your presence with a wall of text and explanation, you're going to really put people off from just wanting to have a fun experience where it's like, oh, I feel like I am the ferret. Oh, I feel like I am playing. Oh, I feel like I am in the game. So really give your game to your player by just letting them be in it as quickly as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. Thank you for, I didn't realize that was why they had those little instructional cards, but that makes total sense.
Yeah, if you think about a game like Dominion, that is just a box full of mechanics.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so going through a few more of these, the next few kind of go together, so I'll just run through them kind of quickly. After your player has an understanding of the core mechanic that you're trying to teach, if it's all of them or if it's just one of them at a time, a way that you build up difficulty over the levels is by reusing the same mechanics. You don't want to be teaching them a new mechanic every time they start up a new level. So you reuse the old mechanics, but of course, if you just reuse them in the same ways, that's not exciting. So you have to think outside the box, build upon your mechanics, combine your mechanics, and that creates difficulty and therefore engagement for the player. Two more things that are important to think about that go together are being really clear in differentiating objects that are interactable versus not. So this concept in level design is called conveyance, and it could be anything from we have those little blue boxes that are clearly differently colored even though they're the same type of object to those wooden textured blocks. So once you interact with one of them, you figure out, oh, okay, these blue ones are ones that I can interact with. And that's important because if you've ever played a game where like you've opened one drawer and found something, then you're going to open up all of the drawers. And if there's not something in most of the drawers, you're going to be like, this sucks. I have to look through all of the drawers to find a few things. So you really want to be clear with like colors and particle effects, even like shape and size of things. This is interactable and you should play with it. This is just a thing in the world. Don't worry about it. And to go hand in hand with that, you should also be considerate of whether your game object needs to actually move or not. So those static objects, this is more of a Unity thing, but level designers do need to think about it. those objects don't have what's called a rigid body. So they don't have physics. Like I can touch it as much as I want and I can push on it, but that push isn't going to do anything because it can't move. Whereas if you want something to be movable in your level, you need to have that physics built into it. And again, that's just a rigid body component, and we'll get into that later. But the reason that it's important to consider whether something's movable or not is because when you're building this level, especially a platforming level, if something moves and the player has to reset the whole level to get it back to where it was and solve the level, that's terrible. It's not fun at all. Like, you don't want to have like this core platform that like you have to jump on to get up be pushable, and then it's just down and the player's like, I can't win now. So it's really important to think about
Oh
what
my
can and
gosh.
can't move. Yeah.
That would be so irritating. And I've seen things
I
like that
know.
in games people have made. And you're like, why did you
Yeah.
make that happen? I'm so frustrated. So,
Right. So, I mean, these best practices are really just calling attention to not things that you have to put into your game, but things that you should think about in each level. You know, like if you're just not thinking about what's movable and what's not, it will be chaos. So these are just things like keep them in mind in the back of your head, tuck them away, come back to them if you're having trouble with something. The last thing that I wanted to touch on before we wrap up on this GDD presentation, again, the rest of the assets are pretty much just showing off art and talking about other creative documents and things like Unity documentation for people who are interested in code. So if you want to look at those, feel free. But this is the last part of the level design. So in our level, we had these areas that were higher up that we couldn't access until we jumped up there, and we could look around and see like, oh, there's more things up there. Like I think I see a bunch of blocks that could be a maze or something interesting to interact with. So imagine if my camera didn't move upwards and I couldn't have seen that stuff. And that means I didn't even know that there was anything up there as a player. So I probably wouldn't even try to get up there. So things like sight lines, being aware of what your player sees throughout the level, being aware of verticality, which can make the world feel bigger. If I had just had that very surface level of the cage to run around on, that feels a lot less like engaging than being able to jump up onto different levels of the cage. And also scale, knowing how high your player can jump and how fast they move so that you're not traversing the whole level in 5 seconds, or you're making like you're trying to make a platform jumping thing, but like your player physically can't jump that high. Those are just more things to consider when you're making these levels.
I cannot wait to explore some of these best practices in more depth with you as levels roll out.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hope happens is that we get a lot of levels from folks joining the project. Level design is one of the most important activities that we need folks to join in on. Because, of
Mm-hmm.
course, Kaela and I can work on levels, but between the two of us, we probably won't be able to generate enough to like make a full game. So
Mm-hmm.
we're really relying on you guys out there to put together some physical spaces for this ferret to be in. And then we can give play testing and talk about some of these best practices and maybe help you make your puzzles and your cage environment like even more fun and exciting. So I'm really looking forward to working on that with you in future weeks of the project. And between now and then, I mean, anybody who joins this project will certainly need to install Unity. So we'll definitely make sure everybody knows how to get into Unity and do the basics. We might need to break it down and remind people how to move around in the scene, navigate the windows on the sides, and generally understand what's going on. But once you get that, there are so many possibilities.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see those possibilities unfold, Nat. This is going to be fun.
It's really going to be fun. Do we have anything else to tell the viewers out there, or should we log off for the day?
Just come to the stream tomorrow if you're available. I will be posting the exact time since I couldn't remember between the 2 hours in the Discord after this stream is finished. But we're going to be playing Spyro and Snake Pass. And again, feel free to prepare by watching the videos that were linked in the GDD.
Yay.
It's 3 p.m. tomorrow. I just remembered. So
Yep. And what
yeah,
time zone is that?
That is in Eastern time.
Yep. Yeah, we've got folks all over the country in the US joining us. I know I talked to some folks today who are on the West Coast, and you're in Central Time, right?
Yes, I am in Dallas, Texas, so Central Time.
Yeah. So we'll always try to be good about time zones. We get confused too because like we're all in different time zones. So check the Discord. That is the best place to reference to find the correct times for things. If you miss something though, it's always on YouTube and you can watch a recording right here on YouTube. So all right. Well, I'm looking forward. I will be meeting with some folks tomorrow during your stream, but I'm going to check out the recording of you playing those games because of course I too am excited about getting up to speed on this genre.
Yes, I'm super excited. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Bye everybody.
Bye.